Sports around the world came to a halt as the coronavirus pandemic spread. Now the games are starting up again, but the world looks very different.
It's not business as usual. It just can't be.
Health and safety concerns are changing the rules on and off the field, challenging executives and players alike to act responsibly and to think creatively.
We still weren't sure, no matter how much we prepared and put in place, whether this was going to work come the first match day.
All of this amid a surge of global protest against racial inequality that has spurred the world's most prominent athletes to activism.
People can be heard. Black Americans, African Americans, can be heard.
How will the world of sports reshape itself as this year of crisis continues? Superstars and industry leaders weigh in straight ahead. Hello, I'm Jason Kelly here at Bloomberg headquarters in New York. Welcome to Sports at a Crossroads, a look at the critical challenges facing the world of sports. All through this winter and spring, as country after country imposed restrictions to contain the coronavirus, live sports essentially shut down. Seasons in progress were suspended. Other leagues delayed the start of play. The NBA put competition on pause in mid-March. Now it plans to restart play at the end of July, inviting the top 22 teams to the Walt Disney World Resort in Florida, where they'll compete for playoff seeding and then, if all goes well, crown a champion. The league will also be under a microscope, and not just for how it handles health and safety protocols. Widespread protests against systemic racism across the country have led the NBA, like many organizations, to examine its commitment to diversity and equality. I spoke with LeBron James in late June, shortly after the NBA announced its restart plan. He said he hopes being back on the court doesn't distract from those larger issues he's been quite vocal about. He's looking forward to playing again for sure, but he also knows things have changed in the last few months.
You come to the point where the playoffs are almost around the corner, and then, it stopped because of a world pandemic and COVID-19. So, we just all had to be at bay and just kind of wait around and see what was going on and see what was happening, but understanding that the health of, of every individual is so much more important at that point in time than worrying about, chasing a ring or chasing a championship because there were lives at risk and no one had an answer to it. And then bring us up to speed to the George Floyd killing, and just seeing that video and seeing, how many people were hurt, not only in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, but all over the world, and especially in the Black community, because we've seen this over and over and over, about police brutality and the things that goes on in the inner city when being, racially profiled as an African-American Black man or as a Black woman, and things that's going on. So, it's been a lot that's going on in 2020. Activism and activists have always been around, but people had a closed ear and a closed mind, and didn't want to recognize and didn't want to hear and didn't want to be knowledgeable about what they were speaking, where they were coming from, the passion that they were speaking with. Now it's being heard. People can be heard. Black Americans, African Americans, can be heard. Both men and women can be heard of what they're passionate about, and the calling for help and the calling for we're just tired. So, I don't want to say activism is something that's, now everyone's doing it. No, it's always been around. But, in the case of George Floyd, in the case of so many other innocent lives being taken away, they've put up a stand, and now, we're being heard, and everyone is being heard. Not only, from what Muhammad Ali was saying, there's so many that came before him and so many after him, but even the local people, the people in the community, because those are the real ones, the people that's in the communities, that's living and walking those streets and being racially profiled and being judged every day that they walk in their cities. They're the ones that need to be heard, and they're being heard right now, and it's great to see.
And LeBron, we move from that to more than a vote. What does success look like for more than a vote as you look toward November?
I think success looks like educating the people that's on the grounds in these cities that we're tackling. We've had voter suppression for so long. People not understanding how they can vote, where they can vote, if their vote really counts. In the Black community, you always hear go out and vote. But what you don't understand is who am I voting for? Where can I vote? How many people am I voting for? What does these votes mean? What do they stand for? So the education side is what we're most proud about. That is success for us, where we're actually getting these communities out to vote, but they're even more educated on who they're voting for, how they can vote, where they can vote. They have that power. There's a lot of people that believe that they can't vote because they've had previous convictions with the law or they've been to jail and they've been told that they cannot vote, that their vote does not get submitted and things of that nature, which is untrue in a lot of states that we're tackling. So to educate and to make aware of the people that's on the ground that has a lot to do with the future of our country, that is one of the success that we can have. And we'll see what happens in November.
LeBron, I do wonder, I think back to 2014 and Eric Garner and the T-shirt that you wore, and the NBA has consistently stood behind you and its players in terms of protest. Other leagues have not done that, most notably the NFL. Now the NFL has changed its tune. What do you make of that?
I do know one thing I can speak from is what I'm a part of. And I'm a part of a league with a great commissioner in Adam Silver, and he's always listened to the voice of his players. As far as the NFL, I'm not in those locker rooms. I'm not with those guys, but I do understand that an apology, I have not heard a true official apology to Colin Kaepernick on what he was going through and what he was trying to tell the NFL and tell the world about why he was kneeling when he was doing that as a San Francisco 49er. So I just see that to still be wrong. And now they are listening some, but I still think we have not heard that official apology to a man who basically sacrificed everything for the better of this world. So I can say that about that.
So when you think about what happens next from an NBA perspective, LeBron, assuming that everything stays the same, you're to be playing basketball pretty soon, which feels like good news for a lot of folks. And I would imagine, especially you, given the position the Lakers were in going into all this. Kyrie Irving has said, and I believe you have disagreed, that maybe you should think about not playing. What do you think?
For us to be together as a league once again, along what's going on right now, it gives us another opportunity to continue to talk about what's going on, the social injustice, the police brutality, Black Lives Matter, and continue to hit home on things that's going on that matters a lot as well. But sports has always been something that kind of galvanized and brought people together and just make people feel, very uplifted. And I know in my community right now, we just, unfortunately, a beautiful 18-year-old girl by the name of Nakia Crawford was just gunned down in Akron, Ohio last week, a week after graduating high school. Just to get people's minds, not saying forget about certain situations, but to just have a breath of fresh air, to have a sense of love, what sports can bring. And I know what I do on the basketball court can bring a lot of happiness to a lot of households, including my own, and including my community and my kids. So I'm looking forward to the season getting restarted, getting back in the Laker uniform, and continue to push the envelope, not only on the court, but off the court. Because like I've been telling a lot of my colleagues, a lot of my friends, I won't stop until I see change. And I mean real change for us as a community, as a Black community, both on and off the floor. So my mission stays the same.
Coming up, we turn to Europe, where soccer, football, is back in full swing. We speak with the top international executive at the Bundesliga. His phone's ringing off the hook with sports looking for advice.
We've been talking to leagues in the US, we've been talking to leagues all around the world who were interested in what we were doing.
This is Bloomberg. Welcome back to a Bloomberg special report, Sports at a Crossroads. I'm Jason Kelly. Well, the National Women's Soccer League was the first U.S. pro league to return to play since the pandemic began. Major League Soccer, the men's league, followed shortly after. I caught up with LA Galaxy president Chris Klein, a former player, while the MLS's Back tournament was wrapping up its opening weekend in Orlando. He was frank about the financial toll the shutdown has taken, but he said it's also had some surprising benefits.
From an economic standpoint, it's been fairly drastic. And if you look at our company, I mean, we're in the live entertainment business with AEG, and there's really no live entertainment right now. There is this idea that, we're kind of all in this together. And even other clubs that are in our market, other sports teams in LA, all the teams in LA have gotten together. We're on a weekly call together. And so we've learned different protocols, safety protocols that they've had in place, testing protocols that they've had in place. And we all share together. We correspond with state and local governments together, with county officials together. And so we continue to learn with each other. I think when you look at the sports leagues, you look at Major League Soccer being first. Actually, the NWSL was first with their tournament in Salt Lake. And so we've learned from them. We're the first men's sport to play. So I'm sure the NBA is learning from us. And then we're all following Major League Baseball because they're going to be the first that are going to play in home markets. And so we're gathering information from everyone so that we can try to learn and do it in the best way possible.
Well, European soccer is certainly leading the way in resuming play. Germany's Bundesliga picked up its season a full month ahead of its counterparts in Spain, the UK, and Italy. I spoke with Bundesliga International CEO Robert Klein. He told me how the league came back from its sudden shutdown.
Quite quickly, there was a crisis management team put in place to look at how we could do a restart and what that would involve. And one of the first things that happened, as you will know probably, was setting up a medical commission that was working with the local governments. In Germany, there are 16 states, and those states are responsible for their health protocol and decisions. And working closely with them to create what would be possible in terms, we knew when we started again, it would be without fans, that was clear. But for the rest, you can imagine in a stadium, you've got the clubs, you've got the players, you've got the production teams, which are important, of course, in terms of professional sport. And one of the key things as well was also the interaction with politicians and also with all the other stakeholders so that people understood, and this was sometimes not immediately understood, that we would not be, as professional sport, taking tests away from German society. In fact, in the end, it turned out to be the opposite. We were able to contribute some. The German government had committed to 500,000 tests per week right from the start, and those were always delivered. So in summary, it was really getting the crisis management team together, the whole of the league working together, the clubs, the production, the medical, and then also a lot of working with the 16 states. We played the matches in the stadium, so people were, and clubs were moving, and it was a mammoth task involving lots and lots of hours and work. And as everyone has seen with COVID, we still weren't sure, no matter how much we prepared and put in place, whether this was going to work come the first match day.
So, Robert, we are Bloomberg, so let's talk about the economics of this. No fans in the stadiums. Sponsors, I'm sure you were having conversations with as well. How do you sort of put the dollars and cents around this? The euro, I guess, is more appropriate, to understand the implications for the game and for the league, and especially for your part of the business, the international piece?
Well, gate receipts and therefore fans are a big part for clubs. So there's without a doubt a knock for them financially, and they've made individual statements. And with the season, which will restart on the 18th of September, we are working to have concepts where fans can come back, but only when it's safe. And it certainly looks like at the restart there will not be. So there will be financial, and there is financial impact for the clubs first and foremost. From a league perspective, one of the drivers to get started again was so that we could ensure other revenues which come through our broadcast partners could be delivered, and which is of course also then paid on through to the clubs, which was one of the reasons why it was really important to see that we could get ourselves started in the middle of May. The 16th of May, when the restart happened, I was in touch with partners and friends all around the world. And it was, to have been successful in creating this massive complex, and to also be able to support other leagues. We've been talking to leagues in the US, we've been talking to leagues all around the world who were interested in what we were doing.
Right.
Not duplicate, but you can share in the knowledge. And the solidarity that came out of that was really quite heartwarming, in a time, as you know, when things are not so easy.
Coming up, a top baseball agent says negotiations around that league's restart may have destroyed relations between players and owners.
There's no trust on either side, unfortunately.
And a top NFL executive says that league is finally ready to take action in support of racial justice.
This is a lean-in opportunity and moment in time in our country.
This is Bloomberg. Welcome back to a Bloomberg special report, Sports at a Crossroads. I'm Jason Kelly in New York. Well, Major League Baseball, they were well into spring training when that season was postponed. Now players are in what's called summer camp, preparing to play a 60-game schedule. This followed months of bitter negotiations between the owners and the Players Association on exactly how the restart would be handled. Player agent Rachel Luba told me that acrimony may have done permanent damage to the sport.
There's no trust on either side, unfortunately. And, you don't really see a working relationship, which, again, is unfortunate. And the biggest losers ultimately seem to be the fans. I think if both sides kind of just could somehow figure out a way or find two people that could come to the table and, be objective and try to negotiate something, I think within 2 days you could have come to a resolution. But instead you have this back and forth where one party isn't talking to the other party really. And, it was just kind of, it was a mess, as everyone saw.
How do we go into this shortened season? What's the tone? What are you most concerned about on behalf of your clients?
At the end of the day, the players are just excited to kind of be back out there and playing, but also just, the uncertainty of everything and, what's going to happen. We see these constant test delays and where players, they're very strict. If you do not get every morning when they wake up, they have to show and submit their negative tests. If they do not, they cannot go to the field. And, I understand rightfully so, but it takes sometimes, there's been several days where players there's a delay and they can't go to the field. So I think there's just a lot of uncertainty once they start traveling again. It's all the unknowns. And then, is there a chance that mid-season and, it's canceled again?
How worried are you about baseball almost existentially here, Rachel?
It's funny because it seems like the owners aren't at all. They keep seeing the TV deals go up and, they feel secured and locked into their income and their cash. But even just on a personal level with people I know, I think they're losing a huge fan base. They're losing the younger fan base. And I think it's unfortunate. And I hope that they realize that before they get to the edge of the cliff and there's kind of no point of return.
We'll finish with the most popular sport in the U.S., American football. The NFL, of course, had completed its season, crowned a Super Bowl champion before the pandemic swept through the United States. Commissioner Roger Goodell has said the 2020 schedule will start on time in September, though preseason games have already been canceled. Meanwhile, the league has admitted it needs to be more supportive of its players' protests against systemic racism. I discussed the NFL's eventful offseason with Atlanta Falcons president and CEO, Rich McKay.
I think everybody said to us, hey, stop, just wait, delay, wait. And the commissioner and the league office did a really good thing. They said, no, we're not going to wait and delay. We're going to push forward, but we're going to innovate around what we're dealing with. So we had a virtual free agency. We had a virtual draft, and then we had a virtual off season, which is crazy, right? To think that we were going to do all of our teaching from our coaches to our players virtually, but we did, and we did it very well. So I think the benefits we've had is that we're going last, right? Football is going last. The other sports were going first, MLS, MLB, and obviously NBA. So we feel confident, but we're not overconfident. We understand that there'll be challenges along the way. There'll be adjustments. The protocols we have today may be modified in a week or 2 weeks. That's what we've seen in MLS, and that's what we'll see in sports.
What are the specific concerns for Falcons players and staff?
No, I think they're just the same concerns you would have and everybody would have in society, right? You've got the issues of pregnant wives, spouses that are pregnant. I mean, there's issues there. Okay, how many of those are on teams? How are we going to deal with those? Dealing with high risk individuals, that could be our coaches, that could be our officials on the field, that could be different people that are in high risk, and how are we going to protect them to the extent we can protect them? And then from the players, it's simply that they want to understand all the protocols, and they want make sure that their doctors have signed off on those protocols. And guess what? So do we, because we want to make sure that we're doing it as safe as we can do it. So I think our concerns aren't that much different than society in general, but I think they're real, because I think we're all living in this pandemic, and it's real. We should not act like it's not real, because it is definitely real.
You've got a beautiful stadium down there that is used for football, also ultimately at some point used for a very successful soccer team that you guys are also involved in, but also other uses as well. How do you think about that stadium? How do you think about ensuring its safety, again, especially with the backdrop that we're dealing with?
Yeah, concerning, right? So we're a stadium that at our height, when we're operating, we'll have 54 major events in a year. That's 54 events with 40,000 or plus people. That will not occur in 2020. That is for certain. It's not business as usual. It just can't be. So the NFL has issued return to football protocols for stadiums. And we're hard at trying to understand those protocols. How can we do even better than those protocols? And it has taken a lot of work, and we're not quite all the way there, but we're getting close.
So let's talk about Atlanta if we can. This has been an extraordinary time, to say the least, for that city, a city that has a long lineage in civil rights. Where do the Falcons sit in those discussions, and how are you thinking about, what's the lens that you and Arthur are using to think about these issues of social justice?
I think that this is a lean-in opportunity and moment in time in our country, different than in my lifetime that I've been through. We are the birthplace of the civil rights movement in Atlanta, on the west side of Atlanta, which is right where our stadium is located, and right where Arthur has spent so much of his time and energy and money in trying to make a difference. We had the mayor come on, talk to our players, had a Zoom meeting similar to what we're doing here, and heard from her. How can we support you, is what our question was to her. And I think that what we're trying to do is listen. We want to really listen to what people need and want and how we can support them. But then I think the key thing is we have to respond.
We have seen a shift in tone for sure from the commissioner and from the league overall. Where do you think the league is in addressing this? Because it has probably fairly been given a lot of criticism over the past few years.
I think the league is going to change its posture. I think Roger's video told you that, but I think the discussions following that emphasized it, right? With a commitment to spend $250 million over 10 years in social justice initiatives. We've heard very clearly at times from some of our fans, hey, don't bring politics into the playing field. And that's not what the issue is here. This isn't politics. This is racism. This is systematic racism. This is time for change. And if we can be part of that, and our brand can be part of that, that should be a positive thing. And that's something that I think you'll see us embrace.
And that wraps up our special report, Sports at a Crossroads. Stay tuned to Bloomberg Television and Radio for all the latest on the business of sports. And of course, check out Bloomberg.com 24 hours a day for all the latest news and analysis. Stay safe and healthy, everyone. I'm Jason Kelly in New York. This is Bloomberg.